I'm going to talk today about how to set sales targets for your bridal shop in a way that aligns with the growth trajectory of your bridal shop, which hopefully is upwards. So we want to use data to set bridal sales goals that make sense. And today I am going to both walk you through how to set sales targets and how to make them make sense. And I'm also going to give you a tool that helps you calculate those sales goals and how to put data behind those sales goals. So pulling from your data in BridalLive as well as QuickBooks, so your financial statements, so that you can make sense of these sales targets and set them at the right level. So first of all, I want to ask you, are you pulling sales targets out of thin air? Because I see this a lot with my clients. This happens all of the time. You have a great tool in BridalLive that allows you to see progress towards your sales targets. But I get the question all the time from bridal shop owners, how do I actually know what numbers to put into BridalLive so that I can communicate to my team about the targets that they should be hitting? And the purpose of your targets is to align your team to the growth of your company. So you want to be basing those targets on data. So you can be pulling those targets from BridalLive, from your historic data, so that you know what you're headed towards in the future and that you can communicate that to your team, but also that you can line up your operations accordingly. So are your sales targets too low? Your sales targets can be too low or they can be too high. And if you are afraid to set growth-oriented targets, there are consequences. If you're afraid of growing, which happens, this is what can happen. You set your targets too low, and then you have an unmotivated team. And this can be completely unconscious or subconscious that your team just doesn't realize what they are capable of. As the owner of the business, as the CEO of your business, it's your job to lead your team, to help them understand what they are capable of and to give them the tools to move ahead. So if your sales targets are too low, your team can be unmotivated. Low sales targets can equal low revenue or revenue that is not living up to your potential as a company. And what that means is that your operations will not align to growth if you don't have the money to support operations, or if the vision of your company does not align to growth and that isn't aligning to operations, you're not going to have the operations to lift your company forward. And so that means that the company will stagnate. If you're flatlining, you're just not going to be able to get that lift into the future. That also means that your net profit, the net profit of the company, which also helps the company move forward, will be low or negative. And you will not have enough money also to pay yourself. This is related. If you are not paying yourself, this is also related to net profit. That's going to be a problem. That means that the business is not sustainable. Is not financially viable if you're not paying yourself enough. So those sales targets are really important, that they're in the right place and not too low. Are your sales targets too high? This can also be an issue. So if your sales targets are so high that they are unrealistic or unachievable, that can also come with unintended consequences. Does your team have the tools to meet the targets that you're setting for them? So if you're setting really aggressive targets, do they have the tools and training to meet those targets? And how are they going to get to those targets that you're setting for them? So a corollary to this, or another way of framing this, is if you are putting the tools and training into the hands of your team, then you can set more aggressive targets. So where are you funneling the resources in your company at this time? And then another thing to think about when you're setting your sales targets is, where is your constraint? Because you might be thinking that the constraint is on your sales conversions when actually the constraint is somewhere completely different in your company, in your bridal shop. So here are some constraints. Another way to think of constraints is bottlenecks. Where is the problem? Where is the bottleneck in your company? So when you're trying to bring customers in the door or trying to bring sales in the door, here are some of the constraints that you could be working with. The first is visibility. How visible are you? Do people know? Do brides know that you exist? The next one is the conversion to the appointment. If you're getting traffic on your website, if you're getting traffic on social, is that traffic actually being converted into bridal appointments? And if it's not, you have a constraint there. You have something you need to fix before you even get to the sales conversions. I mean, you might have a problem with sales conversions, but then, is there a problem kind of upstream? And then there's capacity, there's space capacity, and there's team capacity are the major ones for bridal shops. Space capacity is dressing rooms. Do you not have enough dressing rooms to meet the demand that you have in terms of requested bridal appointments? And then with team capacity, maybe you have enough dressing rooms, but you are understaffed. And then finally, we get to the conversion from appointment to sale. And that's where we're getting into the question of sales targets. So if you are having a constraint at any of these places before you get to conversion from appointment to sale, and you're setting really aggressive sales targets, that in a way that's kind of unfair to your team. So you want to kind of consider, where are the bottlenecks, where are the constraints before you start setting really aggressive targets for your team. Next is, how do I set sales targets? And I have created a tool for you to make this a lot simpler, a lot easier, so that you can take your numbers from BridalLive. You can take them from other places, but it really is designed, this tool is designed, it has instructions for BridalLive. You can translate it if you're in another system. But to use that data on your historical numbers, so that then we can take the past numbers and then know, how are we moving forward? And the reason that we're taking the past is so that you can anchor those targets on prior year sales. We need to know where we're coming from so that we know where we're going. So we have this free tool. You can get this free tool. We're going to link to it in the comments, but you can, or on the page where you're seeing this. So you can grab that tool so that you can use the numbers from your store. When you're looking at this tool, I always use the example of a $1.2 million store, but your store could be different. It could be $500,000 in revenue. It can be $5 million in revenue. It doesn't really matter. But in the example, we're going to see a $1.2 million store because that's easy math for me. And so we want to use data. We want to anchor targets based on prior year sales. So how do I set targets? And we want to explore a low, mid, and high target scenarios based on percentage increase. And this method is just going to give you, if you are not doing this, it just gives you a simple starting place. Yes, we can get more complex, and I always do get more complex with my clients, but this just gives you an easy starting place to start to explore, what if we are setting targets at 10, 30, and 40%, or whatever you want to put into this tool, and see what happens. So let's walk through what that looks like. So here's the tool that you can download for yourself. And as you can see in this, when you go into this tool, these cells are going to be pink, where you can put in your own numbers. So let's say you have $1.2 million in annual sales. You just put that in here, you put in your gown count, and then you can put in your gown sales only, okay? And then we come over here to your sales targets, and we have a low scenario, a mid scenario, and a high scenario where you can put in your percentages. So this is a percentage increase over the prior year. And in this case, you can see what this tool spits out. So the low case from 1.2 is going to give you 1,320,000. Mid case, 1,000,400. High case, 1.6. So this is just a quick and easy way for you to get those kind of the dollar amounts, and then also a gown, your gown sales here. And then what makes this a lot more digestible to understand is how your targets translate into a weekly gown sale count. So looking down here, in our low, mid, high, if we go to the high case, okay, that's 2.8 gown sales per week. Is that doable for you? Going back to what I said earlier, does your sales team have the tools and training to make another 2 to 3 gown sales per week on average throughout the year? Yes or no? So that's what you want to ask yourself when you're using this tool and when you're exploring what these scenarios, these low, mid, and high scenarios look like for you. And what about seasonality, you ask? Because obviously this isn't steady throughout the year. So let's set sales targets by month. And this, as you can see, all we do is we take your historical sales by month, January through December, and enter those monthly sales. Okay, so enter last year's monthly sales, and the tool will calculate your monthly targets. And you see that you have your total sales, your gown sales, and the count for your low, mid, and high, so that you can get that idea of what you want to set each month. You could even break this out into quarters as well. So a quarter is just a 3-month chunk. So if you want a quarter, just add January, February, March together for Q1. Okay, now let's talk about profit. So you want to keep an eye on net profit as you grow. And what this means is that you're going to combine your sales targets with your financial data from QuickBooks. And over here, you see that you can enter financial info from QuickBooks. Okay, so we have your cost of goods sold, your expenses, and your net profit. So if you have your financials in QuickBooks up to date, this shouldn't be a problem. And then what you get back is a projection of the impact of your sales targets on net profit. So what that means is, I'm going to back up. If we look at the current year, you have your net profit, say for 2024, if we're talking about 2024, and then you can see what that would mean as you grow, and we're kind of holding things equal. This is really a back of the envelope calculation. We're not getting too fancy here because I'm putting this out to everyone, but even back of the envelope calculations can really help if you're coming from nothing. Okay, so the idea here is that we're holding expenses. We're doing a slight increase on expenses in this model. It's just increasing expenses by 10%. So the assumption here is that you're more or less keeping your expenses, your team even but you're increasing your sales. And so if you're able to increase your sales, but keep everything more or less even, then what does that do to your net profit? And just to give you an idea of what you want your net profit to look like, because people always ask me about benchmarks, is that you want your net profit to be in the range. A healthy net profit is like 15 to 20%. So if you're in 15 to 20%, you're doing pretty good. If you're below 10%, you're gonna feel like you're struggling a little bit. And I'm not gonna get into balance sheet here, but like this is those are some kind of benchmarks to keep in mind. And even if you can just get these numbers in here, that's gonna help you. And then we can go from there on getting more a little bit fancier. Okay, so finally, the last thing I want to talk about is how do I get my team on board? And again, there's a lot here that we could talk about. This could be a whole other talk. But like the biggest thing here is what is in it for them. And since we're talking about bridal shops, obviously it's whatever your compensation structure is, whether it's commission or bonuses or whatever, just do the math because if their conversions are increasing, it's so easy for you to do the math. I mean, maybe it's not easy for you to do the math, but it is so possible for you to do the math. So, what will they make in dollars and cents? And this really has to do with their performance-based pay. Whether that's bonuses, if it's tiered commission structures, or if you want to move to tiered commission structures, the downside of that is that they're a bit more complicated. The upside of that is that you can actually reward those higher performers at a higher level. And whatever you choose, it fit it to your culture, and then that's going to work better if it fits to your culture, and also that the communication on it fits to your culture, and that can vary significantly. Again, that's a whole other talk. And then finally, communicate this out, but then also listen to people's responses. So it's not just enough to communicate out to your team. You need to listen to what they're saying back, and then respond. I mean, it might be that you respond with changes, or it might just be that you respond with support and leadership. So sometimes, just like in sales, they could be giving you objections as to why something isn't possible. Why isn't it possible? Is there some kind of a barrier that they're working with or communicating to you that you actually need to resolve? Do you need to give them more resources, give them more trainings? So what is it that you're hearing back that you need to address in your own company? So I hope that was helpful. We are here for you if you want to reach out. We support bridal shops with accounting, advisory, and just free education like this as well. So our email address is hello@bridal.vision, no.com. I'm Ingrid Heilke at BridalVision Financial. Thanks so much, and I will see you soon.